Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing a highly requested video, and that is reviewing the resume that got me into the Berkeley MIDS program. I'm going to treat this as a normal resume review and go through each section of my own resume, calling out what works and what doesn't about the resume, and then I'm going to show you about how you can actually go to the Berkeley website or any other type of program that you're applying for. This could also relate to a job, and tie back what the requirements are for the role or the program back into your resume to make sure that your resume is perfectly tailored to the program or role that you want to get into. As a reminder, please go follow me on Instagram. I'm going to start getting a lot more active on there, and I would love to get your feedback and share with you my life in real time on there. At the end of this video, I will be sharing a resume template. If you want my resume template, please see the description below in order to get that for free. So let's get started. So gonna start off with my header. I think my name is fine, have it first and foremost. I don't actually necessarily love my header. I don't really think you need your phone number there. I think email is definitely important, and the entire address really isn't needed either. I think you are looking for things like your LinkedIn and your GitHub if you are applying for something technical. But then I also have Nashville, which was my current address at the time. I've obviously since moved, but I really think you only need the city and state in there. I know a lot of people have said to put on your resume where you're looking for jobs, and I do think that's fine if, for example, you wanted a job in New York. Put New York on your resume, but then of course you're gonna have that conversation later on of relocation with a recruiter. So if you feel comfortable just communicating that, then I think it's totally fine. My other suggestion would be to make sure that it's all in one line. You don't wanna take up a ton of room with your header. My suggestion for the header is to keep it about one line for your name and 2 lines for everything else. And that does even include if you're doing a little snippet about who you are and what you've done over the past years. Like, some people like to do a bit of a summary, and I think that's fine, but keep it very short because the bulk of what you want is going to be in the resume. Then the first thing I display is my education. So you'll see there I have the university, the type of school that I was attending, the type of degree, and the graduation date. I also share my major, my GPA, academics, and any type of honors. I think if you are looking to further your education, it's nice to show your education right at the top, because obviously that's going to show what kind of a student you are and how studious you were. I actually only have a 3.4 GPA, which honestly I think with the business analytics double major, it's probably fine, and I think you're gonna send your transcript over too, so that will speak for itself. But yeah, I've actually forgot that I didn't have the most amazing GPA in the world. It's obviously not bad, but it really isn't amazing. And then highlighting my scholarships and when I was on the dean's list. I like doing this just for that reason that I mentioned before, just showing that you were studious and you cared about your academics. One thing that people do on the resume that I actually really like, and I kind of wish I did here, is list relevant coursework. I think that's really helpful because, especially for some type of master's program or furthering your education, they're gonna wanna know that you have had previous experience with some classes similar, especially for a master's program that's kind of continuing in education of what you've already had previously. So I like when people do that because it brings right to the attention, like, oh, you've had classes that involve coding or statistics or machine learning, stuff like that. That's really gonna help them say like, oh, you have a bit of experience, you're not coming into this program completely blind. Then I did list my study abroad program. For this, honestly, I don't think it's really needed, but I think at the time when I'm applying to schools, I'm thinking along the lines of, oh, it makes me sound very worldly and like I've experienced life a bit more. But honestly, if you ask me today, I really don't think this matters at all. But if you have room on your resume and you want to add something like this, I think it can't hurt, because if someone for some reason is reading your resume and they are like, oh, I actually know of Maastricht and it's a talking point, like sometimes those things are just enough to make someone relate to you or connect to you and give you that push over the line. So for me, I thought I'd add it because there's room, and why not? Then going into the most important part of the resume is the professional experience part. This is by far the most important part, and this is where you're going to want to spend the majority of your time. So I'll talk through each job that I had prior to applying here and talk through some of my bullet points and what works about this resume. If you would watch my resume tip series, you'll see my top 5 tips for what I think are the most important things to put in a resume. And spoiler, the number 1 is to make sure that you are tying impact to the things that you have done at a job. So you're gonna wanna make sure you have tons of numbers. I've heard some people ask me, do you think numbers are an overkill sometimes? And I do not at all. I think You're one, telling a story with numbers is important, and two, actually having impact and being able to see that you've done something at the role you have with those buzzwords is extremely important. So I think there's really no rule. Add in as many numbers as you can, and it just jumps out of the page to someone, and I think makes a difference. So let's start. I applied at Procter & Gamble in 2021, as you guys know, and I applied for this program in December. So I really wasn't here for very long, which is why I would never ever suggest to have the shortest job experience as the first. But I do think it's nice to go in a chronological order. That way you can kind of just see the progression of someone's career. I think it helps tell a story rather than, I know some people prefer to put the job that you had the most experience at top, but I like to tell that story kind of like a LinkedIn profile does. So I think it's fine in this case, especially since I'm applying to school and not really another job, to have the least amount of bullet points for my Procter & Gamble job because of just the situation I have. So context is really key here. Starting off, the first one, what works here is that you instantly see some big numbers jump out. 3 billion, 17,000 plus, 1.3 billion. The good thing about these are the metrics actually make sense. So for example, like you're doing a propensity model of 17K plus stores. That's telling me, you know, the size of what we're working with and putting into the model. If you're looking at analyze, pitch, and currently leading $1.3 billion share gap, a share gap is something that makes sense here. And if you read it and you understand growth insights and analytics at a consumer product good company, you're gonna know what this means and it makes sense. So I see a lot of people put metrics down, and I would just say, make sure that they all are metrics that make sense to whatever role you're in. I have a video that will be uploaded by the time I post this about how you can double check that with Gen AI these days and throw it into ChatGPT. Do that and make sure that it makes sense, because I know a lot of times you have to exaggerate with metrics and things on your resume. That is totally fine, but you just need to make sure that it makes sense. Otherwise, you're gonna look very silly. Thinking here, I think I also have the action words. You know, everything is determined, partnered, analyzed, created in real time. All of this is good. And I first and foremost, I wanted this to just share what my current job was, because you'll see in my next video, it does tie into my personal statement and what I chose to share for that part of the admissions process. Going forward into the bulk of it, the majority of my work when applying was my consulting job. So you can see here, I stole this format from someone else that I knew that worked in consulting that I really liked. With consulting, it is sometimes very hard to tell your story on your resume because you do so many different things in different industries, different clients, that it can get very jumbled quick, and it's really hard to share what you've done concisely. That's why I like to add in this client section where you're talking about the actual client that you have worked with and the size of the client. This is a very, very easy way to add in a metric. If you're talking about the client that you worked for and you can anonymize them in some way and add how much value the company has, that is something that just looks good on you, shows that you deal with high value customers and clients, and it is a way of adding a metric that is sure off and you don't need to really think much about. So going in here, I think this portion of my resume is the best because it is a really good way of showing an analytics perspective of how you drive value and impact. For example, you look immediately at the first client on my Anchor consulting job. This instantly shows someone that I know how to use SQL, I know how to use a lot of data sources, I know how to do it over a large amount of time and for a ton of money. This just shows that you're dealing with a lot of very important data and you know how to handle it correctly. From the data world, I'm using the number of rows, I'm using the processing systems, the impact that was made. Then the last bullet point, I talk about how I present to 5 C-suite level executives and implemented this new reporting schedule. This alone, just if you reread through all of it, it tells a story within itself from these 3 bullet points. It goes from start to finish of what I did on this entire project, which I facilitated everything, I cleaned all the data, I ran the analysis, and then I presented to 5 C-suite level executives, and it resulted in this. All of this tells a story. So from start to finish, you should be thinking of what happened at the start of your project to the end and making sure that you are adding metrics to back it up. How much the company is worth, the fact that you're working with a large volume of whatever it may be. Those are the things that you're gonna wanna make sure are readable to both a technical user and a non-technical user. Going down the list, you can read the rest of the resume and take what you want from it. It's all just a remainder of the thing. I'm using active language. I'm adding metrics in. I'm making sure that when someone's looking at this, they're seeing that I can work with data and work with a lot of different people and a lot of clients. So lastly, I did leave in my internship because at the time, this was a little over 2 years ago, and I had only worked one solid job for almost 2 years and then for another job for about 6-ish months. And so I figured it's good to leave that in there because it does show that, you know, I was getting internships when I was in undergrad, and it's just another job to add in there that could show that I've driven impact for another company and another industry. I think if you have enough space to fill it up, you ideally don't need to add internships, but again, it's completely dependent on what part of life that you're in and how much experience you've actually had. Lastly, going to the leadership experience section. This I always say can be multiple different things. If you have additional experience, projects that you've worked on, leadership experience, volunteer experience, it can be any of those. I chose to go with leadership experience because I think for a master's program, it's nice to show that because it shows that you want to get involved and you do different things that you want to take leadership on outside of just your career. And it shows that you can offer something else to a program and the people that you are around besides just your domain knowledge and other things like that. So I've added that I was in this organization called Network of Executive Women as a programming lead, and in undergrad, I was a part of Miami University Women in Business. This part is really just to show that you're well-rounded. Again, I would challenge, still put metrics here because that is just going to make it look like you had an impact anywhere rather than just adding in fluff words and making it look like anyone can join these organizations and just be a member. To show you actually have leadership skills goes a lot further, and tying impact to that is always a good thing. Lastly, I have a proficient skills section. I wanted just to have something to show that I'm very technical and that I have all these skills. Of course, I think this could be something lumped into my resume. I just like to add it because I just think it jumps off at the page. It's at the bottom, so you're not trying to be too buzzwordy right at the beginning, but it definitely still shows that you've worked with all these things before and you're very good at learning new technical skills and just displaying that at least somewhere on your resume. So overall, I think I covered most of it. Now I'm going to show you how you can go to a program website or you can go to a job description. For this video, I'm going to be using the Berkeley MIDS program and making sure that you're going through and tying back all of the work that you have done to your program itself. So looking at the admission requirements, first and foremost, most programs will have very, very similar to this. Going to say that applications are evaluated holistically, meaning that they want you to be well-rounded and they want to see that you have a very broad range of experience and recommendations and a desire to do a program. So everything matters, essentially. Some things do matter a bit more than others, but as you can see, what they have listed here are that they are looking for prior academic experience, work experience, essays, letters of recommendation, and goals that are a good fit for the program. So as you can see, the resume is very, very important to the process. You want to be able to display that you have prior work experience that would make you a good fit for the program. They also mentioned the program is rigorous, meaning that they want to see that you have enough experience to make sure that you're not going to come into the program and completely struggle and not know what the F is going on. They say here that you of course need a bachelor's degree, you need a GPA well above 3.0. So I guess in my case, wasn't too bad. I mean, it got me in, so for those of you there, don't stress too much about your GPA. I think it's gonna be just fine, especially if you have a good analytical background. And then they mentioned that you need a high level of quantitative ability. This should be demonstrated by at least one of the following qualifications: work experience that demonstrates your quantitative abilities, or academic coursework that demonstrates your quantitative aptitude. Usually they look for both. So this is where, make a note that the program is looking for quantitative skills and background, because you're going to want to take this back and tie it into your resume. Next, a problem-solving mindset. They want a high level of analytical reasoning ability and problem-solving mindset as demonstrated in academic and or professional experience, and a working knowledge of fundamental concepts. So this includes knowledge of data structures, algorithms, linear algebra, and finally, the ability to communicate effectively and programming proficiency. It looks like for this program, and this is how I went about it, was going through, you reread through everything that you have written and you ask yourself the same questions that they are asking on the admissions page. Something that I think people miss a lot is that your resume is an ability to communicate effectively. I keep it to 1 page. I will always stand by that. I don't care if they're running it through AI and they're picking it up on buzzwords. I stick to 1 page because that shows that I know how to concisely portray the work that I have done. And that is a way of communicating effectively. So keep that in mind. The smallest things that you think might not matter actually can. And so that's why I say keep it to 1 page. Go back through and make sure anything that you were talking about analytically makes sense. And I'm just coming back in and reading one of my bullet points that has to do with something data science. So for example, I script and analyze Python-based sentiment analysis using natural language processing to loop through 1 million plus emails and 1 million messages to flag negative emotions and opinions from unstructured data and provide predicted analysis. If, for example, I was making this up, I would go back through and make sure that this makes sense. So if you work in data science or you've done some modeling, you know that this does, because a sentiment analysis is something that is performed usually through natural language processing, and things like emails and messages work for this. And it is unstructured data. You have to go through, you have to put it into something structured and then perform analysis on it. So this makes sense. And nowadays with Gen AI and ChatGPT and all of these things, throw these items back into the Gen AI platform and ask it if it makes sense. Once you do that, I think you are good to go. I would give it to a few other people to read over and review. Of course, there's AI these days that can do it for you, but I would go find some people on LinkedIn who have also been in the program before, see if they wouldn't mind taking a glance at your resume. I think it takes no time to give a glance and give feedback. Don't go out there and ask people to edit your resume and do all these things, because people have a life. They don't want to do that, especially if they don't know you, unless they're offering. So I think asking for them to just take a glance at it and see if it makes sense, an easier approach than asking someone to completely review your resume. As far as different mistakes and things that I would change, I think I noted some of the things that I would actually change now. But I hope this can show you too that I'm looking at it now and I have some typos. I'm not using active language for some, like script. I had some of my bullet points are analyzed, some of them are script. Like some of them aren't exactly perfect, and rereading this now, there's so much that I would change. My other piece of advice would be don't get too tied up with the little things and over-analyzing and second-guessing your resume, because at the end of the day, there's a good amount that I would change on here at this point, and it's still got me into the program. Getting into places is a lot more than just your resume, especially for master's programs and further education. You get a lot other pieces of the application because it gives you way more time and materials to showcase who you are and why you want to be in the program and all the amazing things that you have done. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this helps some of you out there to review my resume and the different things that I put, and hopefully helps you to get better bullet points out there with metrics in regards to the analytics space that got me interviews at Apple, Microsoft, Google, LinkedIn, and Amazon. So I do think it's a good example for all of you out there, and I hope that you find it extremely useful. As a reminder, I did do a tip series for resume, so go check that out, and I'll be posting more ChatGPT prompts that you can use to help you actually get started thinking about how to add metrics to your resume and other different and little things like that that can be of a big help to you. And if you want my resume template, please see the description below and make sure to go follow my Instagram and like this video if you enjoyed it. That way I know to make more of these. Thank you guys so much, and see you next time.